Assalamualaikum dan selamat sejahtera. Anda bersama saya Nabilah, Khaleeda dan ini Niaga AWANI. Baik, seperti biasa kita mulakan dengan laporan yang pertama. Permintaan minyak sawit Malaysia dijangka meningkat pada tahun ini didorong oleh faktor cuaca panas yang turut memacu harga sekitar RM3,800 hingga RM4,000 satu tan, kata Lembaga Minyak Sawit Malaysia MPOB. Sehubungan itu, Ketua Pengarahnya Datuk Dr. Ahmad Parviz Gulam Kadir berkata pihaknya berharap pengeluaran komoditi itu dapat ditingkatkan pada tahun ini.
Ahmad Parviz berkata usaha penanaman sawit juga dijangka dicecahkan oleh fenomena El Nino pada tahun depan yang boleh mengurangkan pengeluaran sehingga 10%. Cuaca panas tersebut juga akan memberi kesan kepada sebahagian besar kawasan penanaman di Sabah dan Sarawak.
But we hope now, I think with the new planting material and whatnot, so we really hope that this time it will not be that severe. So we hope, I mean, if the most it can go maybe up to 10%. But we are really hoping that actually, because I think that the demand for palm oil is very high, we hope it will not drastically will affect. So hopefully with the labour will help to reduce the effect of the El Nino.
Malah Ahmad Parviz berkata suhu panas melampau turut memberi reaksi kepada perubahan nisbah penghasilan bunga betina dan jantan. Beliau turut merujuk senario pada 2016 apabila pengeluaran minyak sawit mentah CPO susut sebanyak 20% disebabkan oleh El Nino.
During El Nino, and the hot weather will affect, and this way we will see the production will drop, but it will not drop immediately. It will take between 15 to 18 months. So we will see not really much effect this year, but next year we're going to see more effect where we think the production going to drop, and this definitely will affect our production, and similarly the export, because we cannot export whatever that we have. But the good thing, of course, when the production is low, export is, I mean, the demand is high. So this is where we are seeing that, I mean, the what we call the price going to go up.
Sementara itu, mengulas perkembangan berkaitan misi 2 hari Malaysia Indonesia ke Brussels mulai 30 Mei ini, Pengerusi MPOB Muhammad Helmi Othman Bashar berkata ini merupakan misi pertama membabitkan kedua-dua negara ke pasaran besar tersebut. Katanya Kesatuan Eropah EU adalah pasaran ketiga terbesar dan beliau mahu memberi mesej jelas bahawa Malaysia dan Indonesia yang juga dua pengeluar utama minyak sawit dunia sudah melakukan banyak usaha sejak 10 hingga 15 tahun dalam aspek alam sekitar.
We believe the EU will take notice, and they continue the engagement. Yang kita nak, they continue the engagement, because kita tak nak they come up with any new laws yang what we believe discriminate against palm oil.
Malaysia dan Indonesia secara gabungannya menyumbang sebanyak 80% dalam pasaran minyak sawit.
Seterusnya, kerajaan akan terus memudah cara penglibatan syarikat tempatan dalam pembangunan ibu negara Indonesia Nusantara yang dilihat mampu menawarkan potensi pelaburan, perdagangan dan kolaborasi ekonomi yang lebih luas dalam pelbagai bidang untuk peserta industri dari Malaysia. Dan Kementerian Pelaburan, Perdagangan dan Industri MITI menjelaskan kerajaan akan terus berusaha untuk mengetengahkan kepakaran syarikat Malaysia di persada antarabangsa dan mencari peluang untuk lebih banyak syarikat Malaysia terlibat sepanjang tempoh pembangunan Nusantara. Katanya kerajaan Indonesia secara dasarnya menyambut baik hasrat Malaysia dan mengalu-alukan minat syarikat-syarikat dari Malaysia untuk menyertai pembangunan Nusantara. Oleh yang demikian, pihak kerajaan akan terus memudah cara penglibatan syarikat-syarikat tempatan yang mana usaha itu juga akan dapat menyumbang ke arah peningkatan prestasi pelaburan dan perdagangan antara Malaysia dan Indonesia demi merealisasikan kesejahteraan rakyat di Sabah dan Sarawak dan negara amnya. MITI menambah sebagai negara jiran yang terdekat dari segi geografi, Malaysia dijangka turut merasai impak limpahan ekonomi daripada pembangunan Nusantara sama ada secara langsung atau tidak langsung, terutama bagi Sabah dan Sarawak. Sempena lawatan rasmi Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim ke Indonesia pada 8 Januari lepas, sebanyak 10 syarikat Malaysia telah menzahirkan kesungguhan untuk melibatkan diri dalam pembangunan Nusantara dengan penyerahan 11 surat niat untuk mengambil bahagian dalam pelbagai sektor. Ini termasuk sektor perkhidmatan, pembangunan bandar dan hartanah, infrastruktur dan utiliti, perkhidmatan kesihatan ekonomi digital, pembekalan bahan binaan, perkhidmatan kejuruteraan dan perkhidmatan sokongan.
Hijauan dan reboisasi seluruh
Untung bersih Public Bank Berhad bagi suku pertama berakhir 31 Mac 2023 meningkat 22.6% kepada 1.71 bilion ringgit daripada 1.4 bilion ringgit setahun sebelumnya, didorong ketiadaan cukai makmur. Bank itu berkata pendapatan bagi suku itu meningkat 25% kepada 6.12 bilion ringgit daripada 4.89 bilion ringgit sebelumnya, diterajui oleh pertumbuhan pinjaman dan deposit yang sihat. Saham Darby Property Berhad telah mencatat kenaikan keuntungan bersih sebanyak 17% kepada 60.7 juta ringgit pada suku pertama tahun kewangan 2023 berbanding 51.8 juta ringgit dalam tempoh yang sama tahun sebelumnya. Pendapatan syarikat turut melonjak 43% kepada 685.3 juta ringgit daripada 480.3 juta ringgit pada tahun sebelumnya. Velsto Energy Berhad kembali mencatatkan keuntungan pada suku pertama berakhir 31 Mac 2023 dengan untung bersih 14.22 juta ringgit berbanding kerugian bersih 46.19 juta ringgit pada tahun lalu. Pemulihannya adalah sejajar dengan perolehannya yang meningkat 4 kali ganda kepada 287.51 juta ringgit daripada 77.41 juta ringgit pada suku pertama tahun kewangan 2022 hasil daripada purata penggunaan pelantar jack up dan purata kadar sewa yang lebih tinggi di bawah segmen perkhidmatan penggurudiannya serta lebih banyak kemajuan untuk iProject RDC di bawah segmen perkhidmatan bersepadunya. Laporan penuh di saluran 501 dan astroawani.com serta dagangnews.com.
Baik, seterusnya kita nak lihat kepada data inflasi pada bulan April yang akan dikeluarkan oleh Jabatan Perakaan DOSM pada tengah hari nanti, dan kita mengharapkan angka itu menunjukkan peningkatan harga barang lebih sederhana berbanding 34% yang dicatatkan sebelum ini. Jadi bersama dengan saya untuk mengulas lanjut mengenai perkara ini ialah Abdul Muiz Murhalim, pakar ekonomi MIDF Research. Selamat pagi Abdul Muiz.
Selamat pagi.
Baik, pertama sekali mungkin Abdul Muiz boleh kongsikan apakah unjuran MIDF Research untuk data inflasi pada bulan April, dan mungkin boleh kongsikan juga apa komponen-komponen yang akan menjadi pendorong utama inflasi pada harga pengguna setakat ini.
Okey, kalau kita lihat pada trend inflasi setakat bulan Mac, kita dapati memang kadar inflasi adalah lebih perlahan. Jadi bagi bulan April yang dijangka akan dikeluarkan pada tengah hari nanti, kita menjangkakan kadar inflasi akan terus lebih perlahan, iaitu sekitar 2.9 ke 3%, walaupun bila kita bandingkan dengan pendapat kebanyakan para pemerhati di pasaran menjangka mungkin penurunan lebih sedikit sekitar 3.3%. Tapi apabila kita nilai balik melihat kepada paras harga minyak mentah yang berada sekitar 80 ke 85 dolar setong pada bulan April berbanding lebih daripada $100 setong pada 12 bulan sebelumnya, kami menjangkakan inflasi khususnya melibatkan kos pengangkutan ini akan dijangka lebih rendah. Selain itu, komponen utama yang sebenarnya menjadi penyumbang kepada inflasi adalah datangnya lebih daripada kenaikan harga barang makanan dan juga minuman bukan beralkohol. Kerana ini walaupun ianya mewakili sekitar 30% daripada bakul penggunaan, tetapi dia menyumbang lebih daripada 50 ke 60% kepada kenaikan yang kita lihat pada bulan-bulan yang terbaru.
Kalau kita lihat dalam penyata monetary baru, Bank Negara sendiri ada menyatakan peningkatan inflasi teras ataupun core inflation yang menunjukkan kenaikan harga disebabkan tekanan daripada peningkatan permintaan. Jadi boleh Muiz kongsikan kenapa fenomena ini berlaku, dan bukankah gangguan bekalan serta kenaikan kos pengeluaran yang menyebabkan inflasi sebelum ini sendiri? Bagaimana Muiz?
Okey, betul. Bila kita lihat kepada inflasi teras ataupun core inflation ni, dia memang biasanya dijadikan sebagai kayu ukur kepada kekuatan tekanan permintaan ke atas harga. Sebelum ini memang kita dapati berlaku gangguan bekalan disebabkan oleh COVID-19 yang mana pengeluar berusaha keras untuk mengembalikan semula tahap pengeluaran. Tetapi kita dapati keadaan penawaran sebenarnya adalah lebih baik berbanding sebelum ini. Jadi bila kita lihat paras inflasi teras ini berada lebih tinggi daripada keseluruhan inflasi ataupun headline inflation, ini menandakan memang terdapat kenaikan harga yang disebabkan oleh aktiviti perbelanjaan yang dilihat masih kuat. Dan selain itu kita dapati charge perkhidmatan contohnya seperti khidmat kesihatan, pendidikan dan juga untuk aktiviti rekreasi dan kebudayaan juga menjadi penyumbang kepada kenaikan inflasi dalam bulan-bulan yang terbaru.
Dan Muiz, kita nak tengok juga pendapat Muiz mengenai usaha kerajaan untuk berpindah kepada agihan subsidi secara bersasar. Contohnya, baru-baru ini Perdana Menteri ada menyatakan penggunaan dalam kalangan T20 berpendapatan tinggi tidak lagi menikmati subsidi elektrik. Dan sebagai pengguna sendiri, bukankah keputusan ini akan turut sama menyumbang kepada inflasi bulan-bulan akan datang? Apa pendapat Muiz sendiri?
Ya, antara faktor penting yang sebenarnya dapat mengawal kadar inflasi di Malaysia tidak tinggi seperti yang berlaku di negara lain adalah insentif ataupun kawalan harga, termasuk juga subsidi yang disediakan oleh kerajaan. Oleh itu keputusan kerajaan untuk mengurangkan pemberian subsidi bagi golongan T20 ataupun mereka yang menggunakan elektrik pada kadar yang tinggi dijangka mungkin akan turut menjadi faktor kepada kenaikan inflasi lah, kerana kita lihat dari segi komponen harga utility seperti elektrik, air dan juga gas, ianya mewakili hampir 24% daripada jumlah keseluruhan harga pengguna. Jadi kalau katalah kenaikan sekitar 1% bagi harga utility, ini mungkin boleh menyumbang sekitar 0.24% mata peratusan kepada kenaikan inflasi dalam negara lah.
Dan Muiz, kita nak lihat juga tentang pergerakan nilai ringgit sebab hangat diperkatakan tentang perkara ini yang semakin melemah berbanding dolar Amerika, dan dalam minggu ini saja ringgit menyentuh RM4.62 sedolar dan paras paling lemah dalam tempoh 6 bulan iaitu sejak November tahun lalu. Dan kenapa ringgit ini terus melemah dan bagaimana untuk kita melihat kepada pergerakan tukaran wang seng ini akan turut sama menjejaskan lagi inflasi pada masa akan datang?
Okey, bila kita lihat dari segi pergerakan ringgit ni memang sebenarnya adalah lebih lemah berbanding apa yang kami jangka, kerana kalau kita lihat dari segi asas ataupun fundamental ekonomi, ianya sepatutnya memberi sokongan kepada ringgit untuk terus meningkat naik. Namun fokus dalam pergerakan di pasaran kewangan ini banyak tertumpu kepada keputusan yang berlaku ataupun perkembangan berlaku di luar negara. Contohnya keputusan yang dibuat oleh Federal Reserve Amerika Syarikat, dan yang terbaru melibatkan pergelutan ataupun kebimbangan mengenai kemampuan Amerika untuk menaikkan siling hutangnya. Betul. Jadi kita lihat ini banyak tertumpu disebabkan apa yang berlaku di negara lain. Dan data perdagangan yang dikeluarkan oleh Jabatan Perniagaan bagi bulan April yang baru-baru ini juga menunjukkan tanda-tanda terdapat kelemahan dari segi sudut aktiviti perdagangan luar lah. Jadi ini mungkin menjadi satu kebimbangan. Kelembapan ekonomi dunia mungkin akan memberi kesan kepada prestasi perdagangan Malaysia.
Baik, kalau kita ikut Muiz cakap tadi ada kelembapan dari segi perdagangan, tapi kita nak ambil kira juga tentang amaran agensi penarafan utama seperti Fitch yang menyatakan bahawa Amerika Syarikat bakal berdepan dengan penurunan ataupun downgrade bagi taraf kreditnya daripada AAA sekiranya pembuat dasar gagal menaikkan siling hutang dalam waktu terdekat. Dan selain itu kita nak juga tengok tentang bagaimana bacaan ahli ekonomi dan para pemerhati tentang pasaran apabila ekspor Malaysia menjunam lebih negatif 17.4% pada bulan April. Dan bukankah ini petanda jelas ekonomi luar semakin menurun, Muiz?
Itulah, kalau kita lihat dari segi data ekonomi ataupun perdagangan lah khususnya, memang kita dapati penurunan ekspor yang berlaku pada bulan April ni adalah lebih rendah berbanding apa yang dijangka oleh pasaran. Yang mana kita dapati ekspor menjunam sebanyak 17.4% berbanding jangkaan penurunan hanya sebanyak 5% yang dijangka oleh para pemerhati di pasaran lah. Ini bila kita sebut tentang masalah di Amerika juga, dia menjadi satu isu tambahan yang mana adakah kita akan terus melihat kepada prestasi ekonomi global akan terus lebih perlahan pada tempoh yang akan datang. Cuma pada peringkat ini apa yang kami dapati, kelembapan ini tertumpu banyak dalam sektor perkilangan ataupun pembuatan di peringkat antarabangsa. Namun bila kita lihat dari segi permintaan perbelanjaan ataupun permintaan agregat di negara maju seperti di Amerika maupun di Euro area, Malah jika kita lihat di China sendiri, kita dapati prestasi pembelajaran itu masih terus meningkat. Buat masa ini kita masih terus meneliti sama ada kelembapan ini akan berterusan. Sebaliknya kami menjangka kemungkinan peningkatan momentum pertumbuhan yang lebih baik di China mungkin akan dapat memberi kesan positif kepada pertumbuhan perdagangan dalam tempoh yang akan datang.
Baik, terima kasih diucapkan kepada Abdul Muiz Murhalim, pakar ekonomi MFDF Research. Semoga kita akan dapat lihat perkembangan ekonomi yang lebih mampan selepas ini, selepas data inflasi bagi bulan April dikeluarkan oleh Jabatan Perangkaan pada tengah hari nanti. Baik, Niaga AWANI akan berhenti rehat seketika, kembali selepas ini.
Untung bersih bumi armada berhad bagi suku pertama berakhir 31 Mac 2023 meningkat 8.2% kepada RM201 juta berbanding RM185.76 juta pada tahun sebelumnya, didorong oleh pendapatan operasi lebih tinggi. Kumpulan itu dalam satu makluman kepada Bursa Malaysia berkata pendapatan bagi suku itu meningkat kepada RM543.99 juta berbanding RM529 juta disebabkan hasil lebih tinggi daripada perkhidmatan kejuruteraan. Untung bersih Petron Malaysia Refining and Marketing Berhad meningkat kepada RM108.7 juta bagi suku pertama berakhir 31 Mac 2023 berbanding RM106.4 juta pada tahun sebelumnya. Dalam makluman kepada Bursa Malaysia, kumpulan itu berkata dengan jumlah jualan yang lebih tinggi, hasil dikekalkan pada RM3.8 bilion walaupun 20% kejatuhan harga kerana penanda aras minyak mentah Brent kepada purata $81 setung pada suku pertama berbanding $101 pada 2022. Telekom Malaysia Berhad TM mencatat prestasi yang stabil dan memberansangkan pada suku pertama berakhir 31 Mac 2023 berbanding tempoh yang sama pada tahun sebelumnya. Hasil operasi meningkat 2.0% kepada RM2.95 bilion daripada RM2.89 bilion pada 2022 didorong oleh Unify dan TM Global. Laporan penuh di saluran 501 dan astroawani.com serta dagangnews.com.
Ada sesuatu yang baru untuk anda terokai.
I just don't want anybody to get hurt.
Misteri untuk diselesaikan.
Your patriots acting in the country's best interest.
Kebenaran untuk ditegakkan.
You have to find out who did this hackathon.
Temui kisah anda.
Everything is more connected than you think.
Di sini.
The sick is your enemy, not us!
Promise me you'll finish them.
Stream bila-bila masa dengan Astro Baharu. WhatsApp kami sekarang.
Sarawak Consolidated Industries Berhad SCIB mencatatkan penurunan hasil sebanyak 13.5% kepada 32.4 juta ringgit bagi suku ketiga berakhir 31 Mac 2023 berbanding 37.5 juta ringgit yang diraih pada suku yang sama tahun kewangan sebelumnya. Hektar Real Estate Investment Trust Hektar REIT telah merekodkan keuntungan bersih sebanyak 9.2 juta ringgit merosot 33% pada suku pertama tahun kewangan 2023 daripada 12.7 juta ringgit bagi tempoh yang sama tahun sebelumnya. Pendapatan syarikat pada suku ini menurun sedikit 0.59% kepada 28.9 juta ringgit berbanding 29.1 juta ringgit pada suku pertama tahun kewangan 2022. WCT Holdings Berhad mencatatkan kerugian bersih sebanyak 8 juta ringgit pada suku pertama tahun kewangan 2023 berbanding untung bersih 31 juta ringgit pada suku sama pada tahun sebelumnya. Kumpulan itu mencatatkan hasil lebih rendah sebanyak 405 juta ringgit bagi suku berkenaan berbanding 605 juta ringgit bagi suku sama pada tahun sebelumnya. Laporan penuh di saluran 501 dan astrawani.com serta dagangnews.com.
Alright, moving on with some international updates. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman said on Wednesday the ChatGPT maker might consider leaving Europe if it could not comply with the upcoming artificial intelligence or AI regulations by the European Union. The EU is working on what could be the first set of rules globally to govern AI. As part of the draft, companies deploying generative AI tools such as ChatGPT will have to disclose any copyrighted material used to develop their systems. Before considering pulling out, OpenAI will try to comply with the regulation in Europe when it sets, Altman said in an event in London. The EU parliamentarians reached common ground on the draft of the Act earlier this month. It will now be debated between the representatives of the Parliament, the Council and Commission to thrash out the final details of the bill. Chip designer NVIDIA's shares extended their rally this year on Thursday, May 25th, soaring 25% after a stellar forecast showed that Wall Street has yet to price in the AI potential of the company that has already doubled in value 2023. NVIDIA, whose stock hit an all-time high in pre-market trading, was set to swell its market valuation by about $189 billion to $945 billion. The rosy earnings also sparked a rally in the chip sector and AI-focused firms, lifting stock markets from Japan to Europe. In the US, companies including Alphabet, Microsoft Corporation and AMD rose between 2% and 8%. Analysts rushed to raise their price targets on NVIDIA stock, with 21 lifting their view on the idea that all roads in AI lead to the company as it provides the chips used to power ChatGPT and many similar services. NVIDIA, the fifth most valuable US company, on Wednesday projected quarterly revenue more than 50% above Wall Street estimates and said it would have more supply of AI chips in second half to meet a surge in demand. Next up, JP Morgan Chase and Company has notified nearly 1,000 First Republic Bank employees that they will no longer have a job as it integrates the failed lender it bought earlier this month. JP Morgan, the largest US bank, has offered employment to about 85% of First Republic's almost 7,000 employees for transitional or full-time roles. Temporary positions would last an estimated 3 months to a year, depending on the job. JP Morgan said in an email statement the bank has been transparent with their employees and kept their promise to update them on their employment status within 30 days. Employees who have not been offered roles will receive pay and benefits for 60 days and be offered packages that include additional lump sum payments and continuing benefits coverage. First Republic became the largest US bank to fail since 2008 after it was seized by regulators and sold to JP Morgan in early May. Meanwhile, First Republic Bank was paying dozens of employees more than $10 million apiece annually in the heyday before its collapse. Though First Republic was widely known for offering generous rewards to staff, some potential rescuers were surprised by the compensation figures on display when the FDIC granted access to the bank's data room days before the agency's emergency intervention on May 1st. On a separate news, JP Morgan Chase and Company has told clients with personal credit lines at First Republic Bank that it will no longer offer them when they come up for renewal. The bank does not offer personal lines of credit and therefore has no plans to offer them former First Republic clients when they come up for renewal. Regulators seized First Republic and sold its assets to JP Morgan in early May in their move to resolve the largest US bank failure since the 2008 financial crisis. First Republic's business model was to lure high net worth customers with preferential rates on mortgages and loans. Its story client base included Instacart founder Apurva Mehta, investor Chamath Pallipatia, and real estate developer Stephen M. Ross, according to the bank's promotional materials. Its strategy made it more vulnerable than most other regional lenders since US deposit insurance only guarantees $250,000 per savings account, leading to a larger proportion of uninsured deposits. Niaga AWANI will go for a short break. We'll be right back after this with Tehmina Kaoosji.
Asia tumpuan utama dunia. Dengan ekonomi yang semakin rancak, pembangunan lestari dan tenaga boleh diperbaharui, apakah pula impak kecerdasan buatan AI dalam perkembangan teknologi dan masa depan pekerjaan? Kami mendalami setiap berita dan cerita. Saksikan diskusi, dialog dan laporan khas di Agenda Awani Asia bersama koresponden khas kami setiap Sabtu 9 malam di semua platform Astro Awani.
Empat jajahan.
Mega spontan!
Satu takhta.
Yang dia bagus saya main. Kau ni kenapa, Mal?
Saya suka.
Oh, Ray.
Kau keras.
What? Berikan komuniti kepada ayahanda saya.
Mega spontan di Astro Warna dan Astro Go. Pertaruhan di pusingan suku akhir semakin besar. Setiap langkah menjadi penentuan. Tiba masanya underdog buktikan kemampuan mereka. Mampukah sang gergasi terus bersinar? Semangat kita, berjuang kita demi liga kita. Piala FA hanya di Astro Arena Bola dan Astro Go.
Hello and welcome to Niaga Spotlight with me, Tehmina Kaoosji. Now, Niaga Spotlight goes through the week in business and future affairs, market watch, industries, analysis and insights. We've got you covered right here on Niaga Spotlight. Well, for this week's analysis, we will be examining household income classification and inflation. So basically the latest on this is the government is set to study a new strategy for implementing targeted RON 95 fuel subsidies based on households' net disposable income via data gathered from the socio-economic database PADU. So, this approach basically represents a transition in the government's socio-economic policy, moving away from the current, of course, income-based categorizations that we're very familiar with, B40, M40, T20. Now, this usage of household net disposable income metrics will be implemented hopefully by January next year, 2024. Now, basically, the issue appears to be M40 income earners or the new poor, quote unquote, are said to be hanging on by a thread. Among them, those even falling into poverty. Now, despite middle-class earners categorized as the bedrock of economic growth, Malaysia's M40 are now battling financial woes and debts as cost of living, especially in urban areas, continues to rise. Economic Affairs Minister Rafizi Ramli has also said, owing to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Stats Department estimates that 20% of households slip from M40 into the B40 categorization, while those from the B40, actually the T20 group, slipped to the M40 in 2020 alone. So from there, moving along now into fuel subsidies. So, it's been actually very interesting because the Dewan Rakyat was told this Wednesday that the government could save up to 17 billion ringgit if T20 are not given petrol, diesel, liquefied petroleum gas (LPG) subsidies. Now, Deputy Finance Minister Ahmad Maslan said in 2022, consumption of the three types of fuel by the B40 was only 24%, while the M40s was 41% and T20 stood at 35%. So in terms of data, total is 50.8 billion ringgit, and if multiplied by the 35% used, of course, by the T20, the value is 17 billion ringgit. Meanwhile, though, Economic Affairs Minister Rafizi said there were many discussions about the economic classification of B40, M40 and T20. However, these brackets also don't reflect the actual economic capability of a household. There are other variables involved, such as number of children as well as location. Now, according to Deputy Finance Minister Ahmad Maslan, the mechanism for targeted subsidies is 75% complete. He said it might be announced during presentation of Budget 2024, scheduled for this October. So, that's just an overview of the big picture. And now, moving along into a quick Google Meet call we will be having, joining me online, Prof. Niaz Asadullah, School of Business, Monash University, Malaysia, and Southeast Asia lead of the Global Labour Organization. Thanks for joining us on Niaga Spotlight, Prof. Niaz. How are you doing today?
Good, thanks for having me.
Fantastic. So, Prof, moving along quickly, the urban-rural divide in Malaysia's household income classification is also stark. For example, M40 salary in urban qualifies as T20 in rural, many M40s in urban areas now classify as B40 due to rising inflation. What more with subsidies potentially being cut? Can income classification, according to household income, address this issue?
That's a great question, and you're right to worry about the relevance of the broad three-way income classification. For years, such classification helped the government to focus on the needs of most deprived section of the society. Take, for instance, EKASI database that was used to identify the majority of low-income Malaysians living on less than 5,000 ringgit a month. They were being identified as B40, but this income threshold has now become questionable, particularly after the pandemic, where 20% of Malaysian households from M40 group have been pushed into B40 income category. And this has created a lot of social anxiety among our so-called middle class. And add to this the growing inflationary pressure in Malaysian cities. And they have combined to create new forms of social exclusion and economic vulnerability. And the pressure on the government has grown. And this is why our Economy Minister, YB Rafizi, is considering a new approach next year, focusing instead on household-led income, disposable income, reclassifying the current three-way approach that we have to target who should receive government support to make sure that no one is left behind in such difficult times.
Thanks for that, Prof. Niaz. Now, moving in a little bit deeper, overall inflation is currently at 3.4%. In fact, of course, Malaysia's Consumer Price Index, the CPI for food and non-alcoholic beverages, was just recently reported at 6.850 as of March 2023, outpacing all other categories, while wages, of course, remain stagnant. In your opinion, what public policy strategies can help Malaysian households cope more broadly?
Let me first clarify one thing.
Sure.
The mismatch between income and prices is a much bigger concern for the poor. Their consumption basket is dominated by food items. They have less savings to cope with sharp increases in cost of living. And for these reasons, low-income families face significantly higher effective inflation rate compared to high-income households. My own research on low-income families in Klang Valley shows that many are taking up multiple jobs to cope with rising prices, leaving them frustrated and unhappy. This is not acceptable. In terms of public policy strategies, therefore, the government needs to ensure better income support for the poor, while at the same time moving away from price subsidies, fuel subsidies, which are regressive in nature. This is a fiscally smarter way of redistributing market income through effective transfers for those who deserve it most.
Thanks for that, Prof. And of course, speaking of more fiscally feasible solutions and avenues, now cash aid programs for B40, for example, are the go-to silver bullet for government assistance, have been historically so, but don't cover, for example, M40 households with home and car loan installments to pay off, which have also climbed higher due to increases in, of course, the recent Bank Negara Malaysia's OPR rates. In your opinion, how can properly targeted subsidies then assist with improving the welfare of impacted household? We're talking about an overall as well as in particular transfers to households. Prof. Niaz?
Yes, we need to move away from blanket subsidies and use tax revenue to increase overall social spending. But at the same time, our social assistance schemes are not well targeted, often wrongly leaving out deserving families. This is why some experts are calling for a multidimensional needs assessment framework, looking beyond a certain household income threshold, using a variety of income and non-income indicators. Others are even calling for something a bit radical, such as monthly universal basic income. The good news is that our new government is listening. They're reviewing some of these proposals, including the need to revise income classification, as well as using an integrated socioeconomic database to make sure that the distribution of targeted subsidies are more focused and balanced.
In particular, I'd like to just touch upon that integrated socioeconomic database. How important is that going to be, Prof. Niaz, in particular to figure out perhaps a more transparent way for UBI?
Absolutely. I mean, well, we have to realize that, as Malaysia is, growing in terms of its per capita income, aspiration of citizens are also changing. There is now concerns about relative needs, not just absolute deprivation, and also many are aiming high, and this means that their consumption pattern is also changing, and this calls for a greater focus on non-income aspect of deprivation. And I think it is in this context that the socioeconomic database is important, but also let's not ignore the fact that there is enormous demographic differences across households. Single mothers with several babies is not the same as an intact family, intact marriage with 2 children. This is where, again, the socioeconomic database is important, because then we are going to compare apple with apple instead of apple with orange.
Indeed, absolutely. One size never actually fits all. One last area that I'd like to discuss, Prof. Niaz. Now, Malaysia's blanket minimum wage rate, though revised to 1,500 ringgit, in fact, exactly a year ago, still fails to reflect living wages, especially in urban centres. What should the broader economic focus be moving forward to ensure higher salaries and, of course, stronger purchasing power, in particular for the B40 households?
The broader policy focus should be economic empowerment of the B40 community. We need to invest early in the human capital of youths from B40 families, making sure that they're ready for the labor market with the right skills and quality education. Currently, we are turning out too many graduates with empty diplomas, we can't expect employers to respond with higher salaries if demand is not matched by a supply of productive workforce. But, beyond minimum wage, we must also not forget B40 individuals who don't rely on salary jobs. Many are self-employed, running small-scale businesses or involved in low-productivity agriculture. For them, the government needs to innovate targeted interventions for improved access to technology, finance, and even skills-related training.
Fantastic. I think that puts it in a very nice nutshell. Thanks again for your time, Prof. Niaz. Super insightful, and for joining us once again on Niaga Spotlight. Now, of course, changing the ceiling for household income classification and more equitable distribution of government assistance looks key to stabilizing living standards while wages continue to remain stagnant. It's time, though, now for a quick break. Stay with us and we'll be right back with Niaga Spotlight.
I'm wondering what you make of all this, Dr. Rahima.
It is time for us to stop linking the suggestions for penalties.
Politicians are the most guilty of doing this.
It's unfair to a certain extent to just blame that politicians are the most guilty. I mean, they are guilty, I'm not denying.
I'm curious to know, what was the hypothesis that you wanted to test?
If people were left in quarters area, would they be better off, or should the government intervene and provide formal housing?
Persembahan yang dramatis berjaya memukau juri.
Saya suka vokal awak.
Peserta lain tercabar untuk menyerlah.
First impression is the most important.
Adik nampak prestasi guna yang apa yang ada pada kamu tu.
Anda mampu mengubahnya dengan dominasi BBNU.
Sedap, feel tu dapat.
Big Stage, siaran langsung Ahad 9 malam di Astro Ria dan Astro Go.
Stres juga kan? Bila nak stream tengok movie atau bola kat rumah, internet tak kencang, lagging sana sini. Sebab itulah setiap rumah perlukan router Wi-Fi 6 Astro Fiber. Walaupun lebih 10 peranti bawah satu bumbung, router Wi-Fi 6 Astro Fiber ni sangat powerful. Router Wi-Fi 6 ni 3 kali lebih kencang daripada Wi-Fi 5. Tadi kita cakap pasal bola kan? Gol! Liga Malaysia sekarang dah ada dekat Astro. Ada satu bandel jimat. 50 Mbps fiber dengan Astro dan Liga Malaysia hanya RM149.99 saja sebulan. Tawaran ni terhad tau. Dapatkan sekarang sebelum direbut orang. WhatsApp nombor ni sekarang.
Welcome back to Niaga Spotlight with me, Tehmina Kaoosji. Moving on to future affairs. Today we're delving into Malaysia's gig economy and decent work. Now, an estimated 26% of Malaysia's labour force currently work as full-time gig workers, equivalent to almost 4 million freelancers. So clearly transforming the labour landscape and promoting decent work through gig economy has to be a focus. Such future of work discussions tend towards two extremes. Positive sentiments about greater flexibility, mobility, entrepreneurial energy, or cautionary tales about gig work impacts on workers who labour without sufficient returns. With that in mind, it's essential to harness opportunities for change and positively impact Malaysia's gig economy through structure and inclusivity. Joining me in the studios now to discuss Malaysia's gig economy and decent work is Joel Pang, General Manager with Fast Gig Malaysia. Joel, welcome to the studio. Thank you so much for making time to be with us on Niaga Spotlight. How are you today?
Doing good, thanks.
Wonderful. So, Joel, now gig economy is all of us, especially as many unemployed during the pandemic, of course, transition into this sector. Let's dig deeper first on how gig work's legal definition actually affects workers' rights and protection, together with any positive recent developments that stand out to you in the gig industry.
Definitely. So I think it's very important to first look at what the definition of the gig economy is, because I think different groups of us have different definitions. And I think what it really refers to are really individuals who take on demand, short-term or events-based tasks to earn an income for themselves. And a lot of it actually falls within the flexible workforce. And like what you rightly put, it is also pandemic-induced due to that. And I think a very traditional definition of gig economy, or most of our understanding around it, has always been around skilled gig workers, you know, in the development, computer engineers, architects, and etc. And
that model, though, it got turned on its head because of the pandemic. One question that I'd really like to zoom in on regarding to that, Joelle, is this now a stopgap measure, particularly for those underskilled or minimally skilled, those who are taking on P-hailing, e-hailing delivery services, right?
Yeah, so definitely that has been popularized by some of the major players out there. But I think what is interesting and extremely exciting is that what's emerging in the gig economy right now are really gig workers who are supporting the operational needs in the manual services as well as semi-skilled sectors such as manufacturing, the supermarkets, retail, F&B, warehousing, logistics. And I think this is an emerging pool of gig workers beyond what we know in the e-hailing and P-hailing scene. And this is definitely set to be on the rise because, like, you know, we are already approaching 4 million gig workers, and research has shown that even in the currently employed, you know, full-time employees, 4 out of 10 of them are thinking of joining the gig economy. So this is definitely an area that we need to pay extra attention to.
Definitely. And now speaking about some of the reasons why people may be wanting to transition into the gig economy, but at the same time balancing the conversation, Joelle. Those who work in the gig economy as freelancers often, of course, don't have access to benefits such as paid sick leave, workplace insurance, protections against discrimination. What are some emerging trends or issues that you have seen in particular in this arena, especially now that we're basically back to fairly normal, quote-unquote, economically speaking, with pandemic restrictions at an absolute minimum?
Yeah, so I think that definitely, while it seems like things have gone back to the new normal, what has definitely happened, as a lot of research and surveys have shown, is that job seekers of today are prioritizing flexibility even over some of the traditional employment benefits that you have just mentioned. And because of this, they are remaining to they are opting to stay in the gig economy because of the flexibility that it provides. Of course, some of the measures that we are looking at is how do, you know, this traditional, the informal employment sector that do not fall within the traditional definition of an employee in the Employment Act 1955, how do we still provide them with the social security and I would say progressive pay. So what we do at FastGig, which is a platform provider for the gig economy, is that we look at how do we still create pay parity or pay equity in the form of hourly rates as well as their shift rates. And I think beyond that, what we're also looking at is how do we also create that sense of, you know, employee benefits, because at our own cost, we do provide insurance for workplace injuries or workplace-related deaths. And also we provide performance incentives as well that reward them for good attendance as well as, you know, good performance. So I think that this is really up to, with the platform providers also play a huge part in raising the awareness and also to bring about equity in the treatment of gig workers in our midst today.
Absolutely. The corporate interests also have to be aligned. It's not necessary for the fact that there have to be legal repercussions for them to put them in place. Moving along, Joelle, in light of Economic Affairs Minister Rafizi Ramli's recent progressive wage proposal, what are your thoughts on appropriate wage incentives and additional clarity on this in relation to, of course, the large base of our growing gig economy workers?
Definitely. I think that the progressive pay scheme is definitely a great step forward, and I believe that policymakers and various stakeholders will find that consensus to uplift the agenda of, you know, uplifting the livelihoods of low-wage workers that are currently going through quite a lot of struggles in the midst of this inflation.
That's right.
However, for gig workers, just to highlight that they actually are not classified as a full-time employee, and therefore the progressive pay scheme may not be applicable for them at this point in time. So, you know, beyond just legal structures, I think it really does take both the private as well private sector to work with, the public sector to look at how we can introduce progressive pay schemes for the gig workers as well. So going back to what we are doing, we are actually looking to roll out a Fast Gigger membership, where we are also looking to recognize some of the top performing and also highest attendance gig workers in our midst, and to then recognize and reward them with a sense of community, so more benefits in the form of medical as well as health insurance, and also how do we further incentivize them and reward them for their good performance.
That's very reassuring to know, particularly when considered and looking at some statistics that have come out, the fact that about a majority, 60% of such gig workers actually earn definitely less than 4,000 ringgit, so it's only a small minority. Now, looking more deeply at reducing income inequality, which is one of the possible opportunities for Malaysia, let's look at, of course, female labour force participation rate, which has, of course, historically been low. We've got that roughly 27% gap between men and women. We've also got a roughly 7% wage gap. In your experience, Joel, have you seen women also willing to take on such gig works via such platforms? And what are the type of jobs that they are mostly interested in, plus mechanisms to encourage such things?
Definitely. I think that it has been male-dominated traditionally because of the e-hailing and p-hailing gig work that has really dominated the gig economy space. But happy to share as well that on Fast Gig, because a lot of the roles focus on retail jobs, F&B jobs in supermarkets and warehousing, we have actually achieved a 50-50 in our platform. And in fact, for some of the jobs offered by, let's say, our retail clients, there's actually a preference for female gig workers to take on some of these roles. And I think this is where we really prioritize flexibility, because we do understand that a lot of our female gig workers, they need to balance between wanting to return their households back into a dual income household, and at the same time still maintain that flexibility so that they can balance out their caregiving duties. So what we definitely strive is to continue to provide the true flexibility for them to manage their time, and as well as to just give them safe working environments, so that as a female, they actually feel that there's a very low barrier for them to start working and return to the workforce again. And something interesting to share as well.
Sure.
It is really that in terms of the types of profile, the faces behind the gig workers on our platform, we are really talking about people who are like stay-home moms who had to stop working because of the challenges that the pandemic brought to their households, but now giving them the opportunity to use their surplus time to earn an income to contribute to their households again. And other untold stories of our giggers include students who we are able to play a part in helping them to avoid being a school leaver, because now they can still contribute to their households on
a part-time basis?
On a part-time basis, while staying in school. And we also have the underemployed working adults. I think, talking about household income classifications, we have all these working adults who are also taking on gig work to supplement their income. And we are talking about them taking home an average of about 600 ringgit a month, up to even 2.5 to 2.7K, working on our platform. And this definitely provides them with social mobility, where they are actually able to move up an income classification simply by participating in the gig economy.
Sure. And I really appreciate that you've highlighted some intersectional realities and the lived experience of those who you've actually seen benefit from this style of the gig economy. However, how can better quality of data, Joel, and statistics then help with creating broader policies and regulations that are going to support not just gig workers, but also employers in the near to medium-term future?
Definitely. So I think going back to the start of our discussion, which is how do we define gig economy, and how do we expand the definition of gig economy to include the emerging segments that have now emerged post-pandemic because of the, once again, the pandemic-induced job losses and also need for flexibility. Because I think that the moment we are able to really understand the different segments that lie within the gig economy, from the skilled workers to the P and E-hailing gig workers, to right now gig workers in our manual services as well as semi-skilled industries, and also not forgetting gig workers who are the self-employed, home entrepreneurs. So the more we understand the different sub-segments, the more we are able to also understand the real needs when it comes to what it means for them to improve their livelihoods for themselves and for their households, whether it be in the form of microinsurance or in the form of, earned wage access, or even the type of financial services that will best allow them to, experience true social mobility, or even just thinking about the different segments and the different industry needs. That also allows us to have better data, will allow us to better think about what are the right kind of training courses or upskilling that will allow them to more meaningfully, enhance their livelihood through the right job opportunities.
Absolutely. And one last area that I'd like to focus on before we wrap up, Joelle, is of course, let's go a little bit deeper into these opportunities for upskilling and training. Because the trajectory in general would be this. Perhaps an individual starts off as a PE hailing rider or deliverer at the age of, let's say, 24. But let's say in about a decade's time, you could absolutely have the possibility of earning roughly the same amount and stuck in the same position without having learnt any new skills which are marketable or are in insurance as you yourself are getting older. What kind of training programs ideally should we be looking at in Malaysia?
That's a great question, right? Because what we are also seeing in this new gig economy landscape is that there are a lot of jobs, TVET jobs, that are now becoming what we call gigable. They are turning into shifts, part-time roles. And I think this is where we need to start thinking progressively about what does recognition of prior experience and recognition of prior learning really mean for this gig economy worker. Because if you think about our giggers who are in the retail space, if I have, if as a gig worker, I have clocked, let's say, 300 shifts working in the retail as well as the supermarket industry, should I be, given the opportunity to then be awarded a diploma, let's say, in customer service and retail? And I think it's great to think about how this prior recognition of their experience through the course of actual hands-on work, apprenticeship almost, allows them to just have and I would say recognition and accreditation in that sense, so that when they move from role to role or from employer to employer, that they don't need to go through that feeling of I'm starting from scratch all over again.
Naturally, or even perhaps, let's say, using the same example you were, an opportunity to then go into a supervisory role rather than just stacking shelves. All right.
Definitely. So which is why on FastGig, we are still looking at community building as well, so that, we are also looking at how things like attendance and performance can allow us to then better match our strong performers in the gig economy, on our gig platform rather, to employers, to give them that sense of a career progression. And that's how we believe that, a person is able to change from inside and out while their livelihoods improve.
Thank you very much, Joelle. Absolutely appreciate your time joining us here on Niaga Spotlight. And of course, this has been Niaga Spotlight with me, Tehmina Kaoosji. We'll see you next Friday with more business analysis and insights. Here's to a productive week ahead. Right. Thank you. So we're just in the back.
Rakyat Malaysia di Sudan ini menempuh detik cemas apabila diancam peluru sesat sebelum mereka berjaya dibawa keluar dari negara bergolak itu.
Terdapat peningkatan 197%. Penipuan dalam talian ataupun serangan cyber melibatkan perniagaan.
Ada 5 hektar kawasan hutan terbakar di Terengganu yang mana JBPM ambil masa 7 jam untuk memadamkan kebakaran.
PN sebulat suara setuju pertahanan kerajaan perpaduan menghadapi PRN nanti.
Aku betul-betul menyesal lepas Jenny meninggal.
Azil! Ingat kamu tahu saya anak dah!
Adik-adik anak-anak dah tinggalkan aku. Mungkin ini pembalasan untuk diri aku. Stream cerita saya dari episod 1 di On Demand.
Kini semua pelanggan Astro boleh stream WeTV dengan Astro Baharu. Rasai pengalaman VIP bila